So the first is, the bigger picture is who's eligible for this $600. And if you're a single tax filer and your adjusted gross income is 75,000 or less, then you're eligible. There is a phase out payment, so that means that if you earn more than 75,000, but you earn less than 87,000, then you'll get a fraction of that $600 based on the formula that the IRS has. If you are a head of household, you make 112,500 or less, then you're eligible for the full 600. If you have adjusted gross income of 124,500, then you'll get phased out. And the closer you obviously get to this higher number, the less of the 600 you will receive. If you are a married couple and you're filing jointly, and your aggregate gross income is $150,000 or less, then you're both eligible for $600 each. But it will be phased out if you go as high as 174. As you can see here, adults and their kids can receive $600 each in the second stimulus package, but the child dependency age is 16 and under. So you need to keep that in mind as well. So here's a much larger chart that goes into all of the steps, or all of the different categories. So we talked about individuals, we talked about head of household, we talked about couples filing jointly, children under the age of 17, just say 16, is $600 a piece, no limit on number of children. So within your household, if you have several children under the age of 16 or less, then you're going to be able to get one per child. Families with non-citizen spouse, there's some additional qualifications that they can meet. U.S. citizens living abroad, yes, you can, again, if you meet those income amounts. Citizens of U.S. territories, the answer is yes, with payments handled by each territory. SSDI and other tax non-filers, yes, but there may be a required extra step that you have to take. Incarcerated people, yes. Yes, they're included. People who owe child support, you are possible, but there are some complications with that you need to look into. So the disqualified groups are obviously non-U.S. citizens and non-citizens who pay taxes. So bottom line, you need to be a U.S. citizen. So let's go into the next. And so here is the bad news. The bad news is not everyone will qualify. And so this is the complications that we need to look at. So this is an example. Some of the changes on the second stimulus check that Trump signed is that the per person total obviously is $600 per adult, okay? And then there's $600 per dependent child. Dependents between the age of 17 and 24 are excluded once again as a dependent. They are now considered an adult. So I think what they're essentially saying, and you need to get some tax advice on this, is that they should be filing their own separate return, and then they could qualify for the $600 stimulus package. And it says here, it says, note that even if you were not considered a child by stimulus definitions, you also may be deemed an adult who would receive their own stimulus check. And so you'd have to make that determination and get some tax advice on that. Eligible rules for people whose status is a non-resident alien. If you're non-resident, you're not if you're a non-resident alien, basically if you're not a citizen of the United States, you're not eligible. People with overdue child support, in the first round they were excluded, but not in this round. So you need to kind of look into see what your status is if you owe some child support. Of course, you said people that are incarcerated, they are allowed as well, but there's some additional steps that they're going to have to take along with this to acquire their check. So how will it arrive? As I mentioned before, those that have direct deposit had already started receiving those checks on Tuesday night. And so there may be those of you who are watching this that already have your check. If not, let's see, here we go. So basically, direct deposit began arriving in bank accounts on Tuesday night. It started making initial direct deposit payments to bank accounts, with payments continuing into next week. So you'll probably see it probably a week. I would give it to maybe the tail end, which would be around the 7th or 8th of next week, for those checks to arrive direct deposit. For those, it says the IRS said for those that are mailing checks, they started yesterday. The IRS said for those it doesn't have current direct deposit information, they will then basically email checks. We will send payment as a check or an EIP debit card. So some of you may have got the debit card last time. So take a, depending on which one you have, you'll get it sooner or later. If you want to check on the status of your payment check, go to Get My Payment, which was, we'll go back to that location. This was the IRS website that I showed you at the very beginning of the episode, which is irs.gov. Or you can go to cnet.com and you could, click on the articles that I'm taking a look at, and you can get them as well. If I go back to the front page, this is what you'll see, is Get My Payment. What I had clicked onto was the press release, but this is the page that you'll need to take a look at. And, here you can see, get questions about my payment. So whatever the steps are that you'll have to take with this is where you can get information for the status of your check. Let's take a look at what about prepaid debit cards. The IRS said that to speed delivery to the payments, it will make some payments using this. These are the economic impact payments, or the EIP prepaid debit cards. Now, this is an important date to note. Okay, why is January 15th, 2021 an important date to know? So let's go through and read this. January 15th is the cutoff date of the $900 billion stimulus bill, by which the time the IRS and the U.S. Treasury must stop sending payments. So if you don't receive your payment by January 15th, which is really important, then you're going to be into the next phase of delivery of the payments. If you don't receive your full second stimulus check money, that's the $600, by January 15th, you will need to claim all or part of the missing amount when you file your federal tax returns in 2021 through the Recovery Rebate Credit. So with that being said, if you don't receive your check, there's an incentive to file your returns as quickly as possible for 2020. So there are some possible dates, and a second and third stimulus check could be coming out. So two things. One is Senate is still debating whether or not to increase the 600 to 2,000. If that eventually passes, then obviously there's a second check that's going to be coming in 2021, or third check. Excuse me. But there's also conversations about a whole nother stimulus package, which will have checks attached to that as well. So with that being said, keep looking for this information, and I'm going to keep presenting the information and try to keep you as abreast as possible as to how things are changing. It says, okay, so how long could it take to get the second stimulus check through the mail? Since the new stimulus bill sets the January 15th deadline for the IRS to send out the checks, people who will receive the second checks in the mail either by paper or by prepaid debit should look for that payment starting right now through the first 2 weeks of January. According to the Treasury, 22% of the payments as of last summer were made by paper checks, the other 3% by debit cards. So the primary way was direct deposit, then the checks. So 75% were direct deposit essentially. However, if after January 15th you will have to claim any money to the IRS owes you with your tax filing. When you file your 2020 taxes, the deadline obviously is April 15th. So if you want this check, you don't want to wait till that length of time. But I'm sure they will try to send these checks out as quickly as possible. Okay, so since we know we have this January 15th date, so I wanted to just quickly take a look at this article. So people who have direct deposit set up will get their checks first. I think that's kind of self-explanatory, but still wanted to make mention of it. And then there are two scenarios for Social Security beneficiaries. The first stimulus check, many people who receive Social Security disbursements, who also had direct deposit information on file, they received checks really quickly. The IRS had a separate information section for people who received SSDI and SSI. Normally, people in those groups receive their federal benefits through direct express card. So that would be the way for you to take a look and see if that's how you're going to receive it if you fit in that category. With the first batch of payments, the IRS began to mail checks out the first week. The U.S. Treasury processed about 5 to 7 million paper checks in a week. So that looks like that a good portion of that probably will still make it by January 15th. Okay, people who received EIP cards were the last to get paid during the first stimulus check. So basically, it goes direct deposit, paper checks, EIP. So I think that really kind of sums it up for you in terms of who qualifies for the checks. The second would be how you're going to get paid, or the amount you'll get paid, and then the third thing would obviously be how you would wind up getting paid. So I hope this has been helpful to you. I know this is kind of a crazy time, but this information is coming out from a lot of different portals. I just wanted to make sure that my platform was also contributing and helping to give people information in a very, very difficult time. So again, I hope this helps.